So I was trying to find the right image for this one, but I don't know if there is a right image. I don't know if there is an image that can actually sum this up. Uh, the concept and the idea is let me pull up the notes. It's a little more disorganized today. Theaters of Triumph, the architecture of the epic mythic ballparks of American baseball history. And this for me is just kind of hard to get at because it's trying to sum up the most material thing, right, in terms of the architectural history of American baseball, but in the most immaterial way in terms of what these theaters represent as coliseums of spiritual striving and the attempt to self overcome, to create triumph, manufacture triumph. I was at a baseball game. I was actually at a Mets game, I guess a week ago. And not even a week ago, a couple of days ago. And there's something to you actually step into the terrain of the baseball field and it actually transforms the real. It's like you're entering into epic space and epic time, mythic space and mythic time. And a lot of that has to do with the actual way that these ballparks are constructed. Nationals Field, I think, is actually a great example. It's actually carved into the ground like a traditional Greek theater. It's underground. It's submerged, actually. And I think that says a lot psychologically in terms of stepping into the mythic unconsciousness, quite literally. You're stepping into the underground, right? The American political underground or the underworld of history, where the psychic, mythic, and epic dramas of history occur. Again, this is the idea, both in terms of sound. A lot of the reasons why the Greek bowls were carved into the earth for theater was for the projection of sound. But I also think there's that deeper sort of excavation of the unconscious element to the architecture of such places and environments. So I was thinking about Mulebach Field, Mulebach Stadium of the Kansas City Monarchs, as well as Yankee Stadium. The necessity of these architectures, both of those were actually constructed by an engineering company, I think from Ohio, called Osborne Engineering. They were the architectural firm that designed and developed these stadiums. Yankee Stadium, the original one, always really catches me because of the awnings, the grand scale that reminds me a lot of the old world theaters or the opera houses that you would see even in isolated small towns in Germany. You also see those in isolated small towns in the United States of America from the late 1800s and early 1900s. Polo Grounds is another great example of that kind of architectural phenomenon. What to me, that grand epic style architecture, that very ornate kind of carved marble style, whether or not that carved marble style is how to describe this, whether or not that style is actually marble or whether it's steel or metal or wood, it's meant to symbolize a descent into the creative unconsciousness. It's meant to set the stage for the epic drama that's meant to unfold upon the field proper. When we think about the architecture of baseball history, we're really thinking about what remains. We're thinking about the remnants of baseball in real time that persist. And that's something to me that is rare because when we'll be talking about artifacts previously or relics, we're talking about photos or baseball cards, paper ephemera for the most part. The fragility of those, but also the survival factor of those. When we look into the future, again, to gesture towards the Greek mythological and civilizational history, what we excavate and what we are excavating are the ruins, right? The architectural ruins, whether that's marble or steel or metal. What persists even past demolition, what marks space and time tends to be these kind of the most dense fields of information, which are stone, which are metal, right? These are the industrial handicraft of modern America. They're the modern American political theaters. I would argue much more so than the traditional artistic or cultural theaters in terms of how we usually know the name of theater itself, but rather the athletic and sporting theaters of the Roman Colosseum, or the architectures of Ebbets Field, for instance. These spaces that loom large, particularly in the early modern American metropolitan environments, symbolize. I'm just gonna sneeze. Ooh. Symbolize the space that's been carved out in political time or existential time for the mythic drama, the epic drama of being human, which really cuts to the quick and carves to the essential moment, the spot, the fabric of what it means to be alive. As we discussed with Joe DiMaggio and the concept of his work ethic on the field and what it meant symbolically for like a young child to witness him play and to go all out in every game and on every pitch, because it might be the last time someone watches him. He's standing in and for the mythic heroic drama of becoming human, the mythic heroic drama of striving towards greatness, and the quality, meaning, and reason of being proper, which is a creative excellence, the virtue of humanity. So when you descend into these mythic stadiums and you witness, as in the regular process of the baseball game, you're witnessing athletes who are at the top of their craft, striving towards perfection. Each and every pitch, right? Each and every at bat, each and every swing is a polishing and a harnessing and a perfecting of that technique, perfecting of that craft. What we're witnessing is really the best of humanity. We're witnessing the sharpening of the blade of the spirit or of the soul through this honing of the perpetual honing of the craft of baseball, which stands in stark contrast to a lot of our political, social, economic, and cultural structures, which really are not dedicated towards that kind of spiritual striving. They're dedicated instead towards the accumulation of profit or the undercutting or the exploitation or manipulation of natural resources or people or the materials of the fabric of our societies and our cultures and our civilizations. These are the things that are destructive forces that precipitate the end of ages and the end of empires, which is what's so fascinating about baseball architecture. I would say, again, particularly Yankee Stadium, the original one, is that it's constructed in such a clear and specific way in terms of the mythic architecture and awnings and the ornate inscription on these awnings in terms of the design material, to suggest that you're entering into that epic space in epic time and sort of the forge of the destination of the soul. And this is what is so captivating to me, I think, specifically about American baseball stadium architecture, is that what remains of these stadiums, right, and what will remain beyond blueprints or beyond photographs, is the witnessing of this epic field of play, which is really, it's a change in the signature of space and time due to the way that these stadiums are constructed, and they're constructed beforehand to enable the expression of this epic drama, particularly in terms of the ornate carving out of these spaces, especially the professional baseball spaces. They are themselves a dramatic architecture. So if you think of maybe a sandlot baseball game, that might be evocative of some like a pastoral element or a pastoral quality, as well as a stickball game, baseball game. But when you look at the ornate architectures of these professional stadiums, I'm going to sneeze again. The ornate architectures of these stadiums are a precipitation, a witnessing, a predestination, an arrival into this mythic and epic time. due to the sheer nature, the mass of them, the way that they're designed, the way that the seats slope into the bowl of the stadium, particularly the awnings, the architecture of the awnings and the grandstands. There's a common kind of metaphysical structural theme to these professional stadiums. Again, Osborne Engineering constructed, I think, over 100 early modern stadiums, including many of, if not most of, the early professional architectures, including the two we mentioned, Mulebox Stadium, which the Kansas City Monarchs played in, as well as Yankee Stadium. We're looking at a mythological, metaphysical structuring, which again goes back to the Greek theater, the bowl carved into the earth, and the seating that's carved gradually down towards the field of play or the theater itself. That process itself is a way of organizing a witnessing, but again, also in terms of the sound quality and the sound dynamic, creates a field of information, a sonic field of information, as well as a perspective information as an objective bystander looking down or looking upon the field of play, and as such, gaining the sense of a objective observer witnessing this epic drama unfolding down upon and in the field itself. The carving of these grandstands, again, I think the best way to put it is acting, or being an actor in an operatic theater, is that you're stepping onto the stage, and the function of the baseball player therein, as we've discussed in terms of the modern kind of epic drama of baseball and what it means spiritually, is to perform a mythological function of self-overcoming through striving towards spiritual excellence, through striving towards the honing of the craft, the perfecting and polishing of the diamond, through the self, of the self, with the self. The material of the human being is being honed and sculpted through this craft and discipline. And the audience is almost like learning this lesson through the participation in this unfolding, the story of the season and the epic kind of mythic dramas of the human beings, all of which have personal lives and histories, who come and go from these diamonds, right? These mythic spaces such as Yankee Stadium, and perform this process of mythic overcoming, self-overcoming. Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth in Yankee Stadium are two of some of the biggest, right? Mickey Mantle as well. These figures, Joe DiMaggio again, these figures who are resonances, they're archetypal resonances within the larger mythic structure of the stadium construction itself. Outside of these stadiums, there's a great picture of Jackie Robinson walking away from Ebbets Field in civilian clothes. There's this sense that you step onto the diamond and you don this uniform, right? These uniforms that themselves have a mythic and epic history of self-overcoming. Yankees, Dodgers, etc. Kansas City Monarchs, great example. You have these uniforms themselves that are ways of entering into epic and mythic space and time. It's a transportation of the everyday human, such as the civilian clothes or the streets themselves, where a game of stickball, for instance, would take place. It's a transformation of these typical urban or industrial spaces into epic mythic space and time. It's a way of transfiguring the ground of existence itself, and through the creative construction and the architecture of these stadiums, creating a space not unlike, again, a church or a temple, wherein there's a transactive substitution of a deeper possibility and field of meaning than just beyond the everyday. So this itself was very much so a part of the kind of old world architecture of early modern America. That's something that you would witness in many small towns, including small mining towns and coal towns, much of that is still there. It's a old world epic and mythic vision of humanity, um, that is so baked into the architectural sensibilities that can be traced back to early Europe, really, and in the sense that architecture itself was a sacred space that held transformative possibility, in the way that it was constructed to be a space in which human beings, the space itself would change the way that human beings perceived reality. It was a space that itself was a sort of a theater of consciousness and a theater of vision and perception, which enabled different forms of mythic and epic time to emerge from the subconscious, in that architecture would assist in structuring reality in order to allow human beings to perceive the real existential stakes, the soul level and spiritual level stakes of existence itself. And this is an instinct that's been lost to the ruthlessly modernizing impulse of industrial capitalism, which strips away everything to a sort of brutal, empty soullessness in the very rigorous, again, streamlining of existence, the template of reality. This is kind of the minimalism that emerges in the mid 1950s, that you witness that in a lot of Soviet architecture, as well as a lot of the avant-garde literature that emerges in that period of time. And what that really is, if I was just going to distill it, is the fascistic impulse of brutal efficiency, economic efficiency, which emerges from this false drive towards progress. It's a drive towards progress which is so far and away from epic mythic time, which is the real progress. It's the progress of the revelation of the soul and self-realization, into a progress of ruthless, brutal material efficiency in terms of consumption and production of material, and then therein profit, so to speak, in terms of capital. You're looking at a radically different ontology of being that is emerging through these industrial shifts, this movement toward an industrial modern reality and out of the mythic epic time of the old world. And baseball stadiums, in many ways, are the last remnants of this epic mythic time, due to the emergence of the baseball stadium as a phenomenon in the early 1900s with Ebbets Field, Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, etc., and the perpetuation of this form, this meta-structural form, throughout history, as a continuation, really, of a sacred tradition of the epic of the soul that is within baseball in a sort of hidden, esoteric way that the stadium itself actually enables. So, without these stadiums, you don't have the same epic, grand quality of the unfolding of something mythic and sacred. If these stadiums themselves are fields, which implies the flat ground, right? Maybe there might be a couple of bleachers behind the field, but this is all, it's a level perception and a level vision. You lose the epic quality of the risen or the heightened objective observer down upon the field of play where the epic drama is playing out. Again, in the way of an old opera theater or a in-person dramatic theater itself. This infrastructure, this architecture itself, much like the old world architecture that's visible in these small towns in America that are frozen in time, so to speak, from the early 1900s and the late 1800s, as well as a great deal of European architecture from more towards the 17, 16, 15, and even earlier great years, so to speak, centuries. You look at that architecture and, hold on. Really what you're doing is you're entering into an experience. The Sistine Chapel might be really the foundation of what we're speaking about here, in the sense of Michelangelo's construction of the judgment as a entire field of visual information. You step under this great dome and you witness this epic unfolding from below, which is an interesting juxtaposition, as opposed to the field of play for baseball is below in terms of the bowl of the stadium, and the grandstands are where you witness from above. um, you're witnessing this mythic, spiritual, abstracted, metaphysical event of the gods and history, and this thing that is occurring in the sky, right? Again, which is spirit, as opposed to in the bowl of baseball, and you're witnessing from above, which is the bowl of baseball, is the soul. You're witnessing this human struggle, this human spiritualization of the cultivation of virtue and discipline through the striving and the honing of the craft of baseball on the ground, in the dirt, in the immediacy of the material, in the stadium of steel, which retains the mythic, epic, old world architecture, which again you see in the Sistine Chapel, suggesting an entry into mythic space time, or the vertical plane of the spirit being above and the soul being below, as opposed to the horizontal plane of the marketplace, right? So the loss of the perception of the vertical plane of reality, which is the mythic spiritual plane of existence in which we are doing the real existential work of being human, the transformative experience of encountering the depths of the soul and the heights of spirit, again, the realm of mystics and sages, and the honing of discipline through the craft, which is in the earth of material and incarnation and density, the three-dimensional. The loss of that plane, the vertical plane of existence, is the death of meaning, because then you're living in this horizontal desert wherein there's no transformation, there's no transfiguration, there's no evolutionary perception. There's no evolutionary perception of the ground of reality, and no transformation of consciousness. And this is a hollowed out field of empty nihilism and political bureaucracy, and the making of material profit, the extending of riches to replace meaning and spiritual meaning and existential meaning. So when you see that transformation, these early modern baseball fields, again, particularly Yankee Stadium, you're really looking at a spiritual architecture that is, in a very subtle way, maybe not so subtle, again, just the epic quality of Yankee Stadium or Ebbets Field or the Polo Grounds. You're watching modernity metabolize this old world religious and spiritual instinct, which was not even necessarily confined to churches and temples, but was a large part of the way that cities and towns themselves were constructed, metabolizing this architectural spirit, this metastructural spirit of epic and mythic space-time, and inserting it and impregnating the quality of baseball with that instinct and with that impulse, understanding that baseball itself was and is the field for this striving, which again is not unlike the Roman Colosseum, where you witness in a very brutal way, a very violent way, the striving of humanity. And this was a striving more towards just survival, with the exception of the kind of chariot games, so to speak, in the Olympic Games, these more athletic and sporting qualities and contests, which are not necessarily particular to these foundational Western civilizations, but a large part of it. You see, again, that Colosseum-style architecture, the direct translation of that to Yankee Stadium suggests this awareness at a civilizational level that baseball was and is a refining architecture of that impulse at the spiritual level, in the soul of humanity. And this, again, is what's so powerful about baseball historical architecture, and what is so enduring about it. Not just the profound density and materialization of these stadiums in terms of the metal and steel, and even stone in some cases, that preserves them, with the exception, obviously, of structured demolition. But their specific use and purpose of witnessing. So when you look at America, something like Yankee Stadium comes very close to, if not directly parallels, the purpose of the Sistine Chapel in Michelangelo's construction, in that it is a place of and for spiritual endurance, and is structured in an almost a diametrically opposing way to the Sistine Chapel, in that you're witnessing the drama of the incarnate soul and density, the cultivation and the discipline through the craft of baseball in the bowl of the stadium. Whereas in the Sistine Chapel, you're looking up. Again, the witnessing mechanism is different. It's the subject looking up at the objective cosmos, or the metaphysical state and spiritual existence of humanity, and witnessing the unfolding of this epic drama through the massive painting that Michelangelo performs. But for the American consciousness, right, it's this within the bowl, this dug into the earth, the underworld, and then you have this kind of this grandstand witness, which again suggests to me that what has been metabolized first and foremost is this Roman, Greco-Roman conception, right? Which it's not a Renaissance model in terms of the spiritualization of the self. It's a soul level excavation in political, cultural, spiritual underground, wherein there's this striving, there's this toil, there's this struggle. Again, we used Jacob wrestling with the angel as an example previously, and I'll allude to it again, which is part of the American mythic subconscious, which again makes America incredibly Roman and incredibly Greek, in the sense that you're watching in the tradition of Greek tragedy, a human epic drama, an incarnate spiritual drama, in which the human being is a metaphysical aperture and a lens and a process of transformation of the spirit. It's a radically different mode than the mythic ontologization of humanity, which I think is very specific to the Renaissance model of art, that you see in El Greco, or you see in Raphael, or you see in Caravaggio, where it's a dissociation and an abstraction of the human condition into a mythic construct, a story, which again is removed even in the process of painting. You're witnessing a process unfold abstracted from reality that can't be reached or achieved experientially. You're looking at an archetypal story. But within baseball, it's a transformation and almost a profusion of the Greek tragic mode with the Roman Colosseum, the gladiatorial mode, and a advancement of that instinct and impulse into an understanding that the epic mythic drama of the spiritual transformation of humanity is historical, it's incarnate, it's specific, and occurs in real time. And beyond that, it itself is a cycle, a myth cycle, a transformation cycle, and it can be witnessed and observed. Baseball creates the ground for us to witness and observe that in the American empirical mode, just through the sheer transformation of history and the process of the overturning of different epochs and eras of baseball, as well as, again, the process of integration, the struggle for of all of these different individual figures through their various different apertures, whether they were miners, whether they were children of slaves, right? There's many different kind of apertures that converge within this stadium bowl of baseball and play out this mythic, epic, subconscious impulse of self-transformation. And it goes beyond the Greek theater in the sense that these are not abstracted stories, but they're being witnessed in the Greek theatrical mode of the bowl of the stadium. It goes beyond the Roman Colosseum in the sense that this is the story of individuation. This is the story of those who are honing a craft in a higher level discipline beyond the I'll call it the bullfighting impulse, which is the violent impulse. It's beyond life and death and into a spiritual chess match of refining craft. It's very non-physical and yet entirely embodied, if that makes sense. There, it's the contact is with describe it, physical objects the process of life is transformed through physics, which it doesn't actually encounter mortality in a meaningful way. It actively seeks to be beyond mortality and into the pure craft of almost disinterested separation from material and yet total participation in it, which is a very sophisticated form of athletics. Again, very little physical contact with individuals, and bat, ball, glove. It's a working with the laws and rules of physics. So you combine, again, the sophisticated craft with the advancement of these metaphysics and metastructural concepts that exist as foundational precepts in Western civilization and the modes in which we communicate spiritual transformation. You're looking at a beautifully advanced civilizational construct through which we can experience the epic mythic drama of being human. And it's almost an utter necessity to construct these stadiums with that epic archetypal suggestion built into their architecture, because it allows for the entrance of mythic epic time into the everyday and creates a radical severance and submergence within that bowl, within that kind of stadium or of oracular theater, to perceive this reality. Without it, you wouldn't have this break in the suggestion of the everyday and submergence into the mythic through the architecture of the stadium. That, again, it's almost like dream time. It's like an entrance into dream time. The difference between waking and sleeping is that the architecture of reality functions in a radically different way. So that's what I got here. I think there's some interesting stuff there. I'll catch you all in the next one.